Midwest teachers holding a conference on how to quietly teach explicit sex education, sex ed, gender transitioning to students. And they're quietly meeting and they're learning how to quietly teach this to your children without your knowledge, without parental knowledge. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. We have so much to get to. Midwest teachers holding this conference, including some teachers from the good old state of Illinois. These Midwest teachers, they're holding a conference led by somebody from the Midwest and Plains Equity Assistance Center. And drum roll, please. That's all funded by your federal government. And the teacher said that they need to work on quietly working with trans kids and transitioning trans kids if they have to, and if they need to, they'll transition your kids if they claim to be trans quietly and without your knowledge, because that's in the best interest of the child. We're gonna get to that. Plus, I've got some secret audio capturing this teacher going absolutely mental. Have you noticed the theme today here, folks? Teachers going mental. Uh, and this teacher specifically isn't in the United States. And I wanted to pull this because I think during the month of June, we tend to think that, this gay pride stuff, the LGBTQ, IB, ABCDEFG, IEO, EIO, right? We tend to think that this is just exclusive to America. It's not. This audio is from a teacher in the UK, and it's a 13-year-old girl saying that there's only two genders. And this teacher just goes absolutely nuts and says, "Where did you get this idea?" And she says that she needs to be re educated or have some sort of education on this LGBTQ stuff. And she threatens to send her to some sort of administration or principal or whatever. So we're going to get to that secret audio captured here, and I got it from TPUSA UK, so it's out of the UK. So their British accents are really funny too. So you're gonna want to stick around for that. Also, a little bit later, Kevin McCarthy, he's going out there and he's putting the Biden administration on blast. And he tells reporters about these recent legal actions that the US Department of Justice took against Hunter Biden. And he highlights the fact that we are in a two-tier justice system here in America. Hunter Biden got a slap on the wrist for insane crimes. And Tucker Carlson also weighed in. So we're going to get to that. I do want to talk about a couple of local things before we get into all of that. I was reading BLN News, as I always do every morning, and we are going to be getting into Bloomington. We're taking a deep dive into Bloomington here in the 6 o'clock hour, first segment. First, Bloomington better not go full communist and demand a prevailing wage and end all of their potential investments. This investment that I'm talking about specifically, it's a private developer building some housing. It's a housing development going up on East Washington Street. And a private developer, he spoke out. His name's Tom Kirk during public comment, and he plans to go to public comment every day for a year until this housing development goes up. They're talking about that, well, really demanding a prevailing wage. Bloomington better not go full communist on me. So we're going to talk about that. Also, there was public comment. Jackie Beyer, she talks about these safes that the Bloomington Police Department gave out, and they issued a statement yesterday. It was in our newscasts that these safes were not good safes and there was a moisture problem. So if you got one of these safes from the Bloomington Police Department, your guns could get rusty. And here's really my whole take on the thing, summed up. Let's stick to police departments catching bad guys. You guys have enough on your hands, I think. We really don't need to be spending grant money, I don't know, telling law-abiding citizens that, hey, here's a safe, right? I get where somebody would think that this is a nice thing. Let's keep government and like law enforcement doing government and law enforcement type things. Law-abiding citizens, I don't know about y'all, but every single gun owner that I know that has FOID card and is legally carrying, right, a firearm here in Illinois, they have a safe, right? And they keep their guns locked up. Everybody I know, right, because they have children at home, they keep their guns locked up and they have a safe. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I just think law-abiding citizens who own a firearm, I think that they get that they have to lock it in a safe. But yeah, maybe I'm wrong on that. Text in 309-451-9299. I just think that, like, yeah, duh. If you have a gun, maybe you should get a safe for it. And if you don't want one, then oh well, right? I can't stop you, right? I think everybody knows that having a safe is a good thing for your gun, especially if you have children in the house. But you can't force that down people's throats, and the police department really shouldn't be in the business of handing out safes to people to avoid situations like this. Okay. Also in Bloomington, there's this cannabis dispensary, and I have a pretty funny story about that coming up here in just a little bit. But the dispensary could be targeting children with their name, with their branding. So I've got all of that and more ahead on the Morning Buzz. Uh, be sure to watch me live in studio. I am here. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. I'm everywhere. So be sure to check it out. And share the video out with your friends. Okay, let's get into it. Mayor Mboka Milwambwe always needs to read this prepared statement before public comment. This is very normal for him. And like I said, Diane Benjamin put this out. The statement is actually incorrect. And I love how Diane says this. Comment isn't for the council, it's for the citizens. Now, this is contrary to what Mboka Milwambwe said. Let's take a listen to what he said here. And like you can see Mboka at the council meeting that happened on Monday, Tuesday? Yeah.
Speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. And any speaker that engages in threatening and disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time seized.
All right. So first up,
So
we
there
have
you have
Jackie
it.
Byer, and then to
Mboka
follow.
Milwambwe, and the first part of that is very interesting. Okay, so he says that it's for the council. Public comment is actually a chance for the citizens to find out other people in their community, what they're experiencing, and if they think like them or if they're experiencing the same problems. There's also a chance for the citizens to see what other areas in Bloomington are experiencing and if they don't agree with them, right? This is a chance for the citizens to understand the issues and the grievances that other community members have. And the council should take this time to internalize and address public comments and address these grievances. Now, one thing I will say about the city of Bloomington, unlike the town of Normal, right? Um, the town of Normal, they actually intimidate people not to speak. And God forbid you try to get more involved in your government, try to get on the ballot, or try to seek a position that is, oh, I don't know, legally supposed to be on your ballot, right? God forbid you try to get involved in the process, because if you ask questions of sitting planning commissioners of the town of Normal, or if you tried to get on the ballot, they're going to sick their Chicago Madigan attorneys on you. So I will say this for the city of Bloomington: at least they don't intimidate people when it comes to public comment, and they actually allow people to come up and speak. But I wanted to make a correction there. Mboka, no, it's not for the council. It's for the citizens. It's for the citizens, and it's for the council in a way so that way they can hear the grievances and address the grievances. Really, addressing the grievances is for the citizens as well. So public comment for the citizens. Okay, then I want to get to Jackie Byer. She mentioned the failed gun safe giveaway and asked the city if they would be responsible for rusty guns, meaning are they going to pay people if their guns wound up like rusty? So she had a good public comment. She mentioned it. So let's take a listen to Jackie Beyer at the Bloomington City Council meeting. Here we go.
Appreciate the department finally alerting the safe recipients via Facebook and a press release today that the safe is actually not for the guns. So I'm just wondering if there is any liability to the city if someone's gun is ruined by using the safe. And was just curious if the purchase of the fire safes will be will affect the reimbursement from the state for from the violence prevention grant. And then I also just want to, I know that salaries of public servants are always a touchy subject, and I don't know what the procedure would be, but is there any way to increase the salaries of the mayor and the city council members, given the amount of
So she goes into talking about the city council members and how they aren't really paid well. So Jackie Beyer talking about those gun safes. And really, I have just a simple take on this. It was an epic fail, and let's leave the people alone. Now, I'm not ripping on the Bloomington Police Department because they got a grant. It sounded like it was a state grant, right? Um, we shouldn't be spending taxpayer money or anything really any money at all on these gun safes. I don't get it. This is not violence prevention. Law abiding citizens, people who actually would use a gun safe, aren't committing acts of violence. Okay, people who show up to that giveaway to get a gun safe, I promise you, they're most likely not the violent criminals that we talk about. Okay, on this program, we've talked about them several times. I mean, come on. Lawful gun owners, somebody who's willing to put their gun in a safe is not out there committing violence. You want to spend that money wisely, the grant money? I don't know. Let's spend money on I actually have been doing a lot of research on this Dads Against Predators and the Safe Streets project. And they have equipment and they have editing equipment that they use to try to catch predators. And they've caught 6 in just one weekend. This is an organization that partnered with Dads Against Predators here in central Illinois. I'm going to get to that story here in a little bit. But maybe we should invest in some sort of technology or some sort of division in the Bloomington Police Department that goes after predators using this equipment. Cops are very busy, 12-hour shifts, right? They can't get to all of the crime. We created a special division or teamed up with nonprofit organizations to go after these predators. Maybe that would be a better use of the grant money. I don't know what the provisions of using, I'm sure that they were mandated to do this gun safe giveaway. I'm not exactly sure, but here's my thing. Police departments should stick to catching the bad guys who are shooting people and cutting off their ankle monitors and skipping out on their court date. Let's focus on that and let's not try to give away gun safes to lawful citizens because let's be honest here, lawful citizens are the ones who are going to be utilizing those gun safes. I've got to take a break. 6:19 a.m. here on a Wednesday morning. We've got more Bloomington things to get to. One thing that I want to talk about is Tom Kirk. So the council needs to listen to this guy. He's a local developer and an entrepreneur, and he plans to attend the meetings, the Bloomington City Council meetings for a year. And he makes clear that if he's going to decide to invest in Bloomington, he has to see if it's worth it since these labor unions are demanding a prevailing wage for receiving any kind of project rebates from the city. So I'm going to be talking about that housing development here coming up in just a little bit. thanks so much for tuning in to the live stream. I so do appreciate it. If you're watching right now, please like, love, comment, share this out with your friends. We are going to be getting to this housing development. Bottom line, if we increase the supply here of houses, then the housing prices are going to be going down. We are in a housing shortage. There's been plenty of surveys, plenty of studies that have taken place. I think back in 2022, it was said that there were 4,000 less homes on the market that needed to be on the market. And we shouldn't be uh, bullying, really, housing developers, these private developers, by demanding they pay labor unions a prevailing wage. Just not a good look. I'm going to be talking about that. Plus, there's a few other things I want to get to, specifically this secret audio that was obtained, I'm sure, by some sort of student, where this teacher is going absolutely mental on this 13-year-old girl, saying that there are only, this 13-year-old says there's only two genders, and essentially the teacher says you need to be re-educated for thinking that. Or for, I mean, 2000 plus years of science, right? And this multiple gender thing has only been a thing for, I don't know, since 20, let's say 16. Okay, it's only been a thing for the last 10 years, if that. And my problem with it is that um 2,000 years of science, right? If you have a penis, you're a boy. If you have a vagina, you're a girl. That's 2,000 years of science. And this word gender has just been made this big thing in the last 10 years. And this girl is factually correct. She's factually correct. Why do I say she's factually correct? Because of the past 2,000 years we've been, living through this science. It says that we have two sexes. Two sexes. I don't even like the word gender. It doesn't exist. This is just a cooked up word that they created. Um, and this teacher says that she needs to be re-educated. And threatens to take her to some sort of senior administration, Miss Willis. And in the audio, it's just breaks my heart. And I mean, this is just reason number 467 why you shouldn't be sending your kids to school, to a public indoctrination camp. Um, it also brings me to this story. There's been some Midwest teachers who held a conference with this guy from the Midwest and Plains Equity Assistance Center. They call this MAP. Okay. And they were hosting this workshop on how to help trans identified students. Um, and they're saying that these trans identified students are coming under attack in conservative states, and that they have to be proactive in helping these trans kids transition. So if that means bringing them a dress, bringing little Timmy a dress to change into while he's at school, uh, in the bathroom, right? To have him change into a dress. That's what that means. And these teachers, I'm telling you, they want to quietly teach explicit sex ed and quietly teach trans identifying students how to transition without their parents knowing. Like, this is where we're at. Your kid could be going to school right now and could be putting on a dress uh, as soon as he gets there, and a teacher could be handing him that dress. That's what's going on. That's what they were talking about. And the Daily Mail exposed at least 30 teachers from Midwestern states, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, Iowa. And yeah, this is a big problem. And you know who from Michigan? This is a big indicator of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. So DEI, that should send off alarm bells. This DEI coordinator from Michigan, her name's Kimberly. She talked about tactics to keep child sex changes with students a secret from parents, and how her district already has these policies in place, her school district. So they're talking about transitioning your child, i.e., how to get them hormones, how to get them uh, their genitals mutilated. They're talking about this quietly with the students, away from the parents. You wouldn't even know if your kid was trans-identified and seeking gender transition solutions. So, yeah, we're going to get to that story because there's somebody from Illinois, a Woodland School District that's in Lake County, Illinois, who slammed conservative parents and teachers who wanted to see parental rights policies adopted in the states. Oh, she she just said the quiet part out loud, and she says, "You know what? Screw those parents and their parental rights policies. They're my kids. They're my kids." Okay, so we're going to be getting to that. Also, Hunter Biden. My God. I mean, if you are shocked by the news that came out yesterday in regards to Hunter Biden, then you're not aware of what time it is. Also, like my shirt, LGBT. LGBT. There's liberty, guns, beer, and Trump. If the news yesterday about Hunter Biden shocked you, then you don't realize what part of the movie we're in. Okay, Hunter Biden is never going to see any other charges from the DOJ. The laptop has been unplugged. He's never going to be charged for any of it. We live in a two-tiered justice system. And Hunter Biden, he was charged by the Justice Department yesterday for owning a revolver after he lied about being addicted to drugs on his background check form in order to purchase the firearm. This is bogus. This is complete bogus. He later publicly admitted to smoking crack every 15 minutes during that same year. So he publicly admitted that he smoked crack every 15 minutes during that same year, that he lied on his form to get a firearm. And he got a slap on the wrist, folks. He got probation, no time served. This is ridiculous. If you or I were to do that, are you kidding me? If you or I were to do something like that, that you would be imprisoned for 10 plus years. So we are going to be getting to that because I like what Kevin McCarthy said. He just said it out loud. He said, we live in a two-tier justice system. And he told this to reporters. Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, said this. Then Tucker Carlson just laid into him the Washington, D.C. establishment, the political establishment, on his episode on Twitter. So I'm going to be playing that for us. But before I took the break, I was talking a little bit about Bloomington. And I want to get to Tom Kirk. And the council needs to listen to him since he's a local developer and entrepreneur, and he's investing here in the city of Bloomington. And he says during public comment that he plans to go to these meetings, these public meetings, and he plans to speak out every meeting for a year. Tom makes it clear here. Tom Kirk, he makes it clear he must decide if investing in Bloomington is worth it, since these labor unions are now demanding this prevailing wage for receiving any project rebates from the city. So, if he were he mentions 3 council members, they voted against his interests and the interests of a vast majority of citizens. Why should you want this housing development to go up? And why should you want the private developers to hire the people that they want to hire and pay those people what they want to pay them? Here's why. We are in a housing crisis, and it's very simple to understand. We are in a housing crisis. I think there's been studies done. I think we're about 4,000 homes short. That's as of 2022, 4,000 homes short in Bloomington Normal. We need more houses in order to bring those housing prices down. Very simple, supply and demand. And if this guy pulls, and if he doesn't want to invest in Bloomington, we are losing that housing, and your rent is going to go up, your housing price. You can't get a house in Bloomington Normal for less than $100,000 or $100,000. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't think that there's a house out there for less than $100,000. And that just never used to be the case, right? You could get one for $100,000. I think the median price for housing is $227,000 in Bloomington Normal. So anyway, Tom Kirk, he gets out there. He mentions that there were council members who voted against his interests and the interests of the citizens of getting this housing development out there on East Washington Street. He also states that the labor unions are a business. Labor unions are a business, and giving them preferential treatment is not fair, and it shouldn't be given to any business. So he talks about it here. Let's talk about it. We've got Tom Kirk. I'm going to play it here for us. He was after Jackie Beyer in the meeting. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
And in return, I'll get to know everybody. I want to present to the city at some point in time, hopefully in the next couple of months, a project that I want to build, for the city and for myself. I want to make sure that this is the right place to do it. I had a great concern over the last meeting when I think what the goal was, for a development to take place, but I think some union, issues got brought into that. And the reason it concerned me was if we're willing to pass on, or even have the conversation of passing on taxpayer dollar to make up a difference, a prevailing wage, that really scares me and really bothers me. Not only do I need the city to accept what my proposal will be, but I need to make sure that the city is responsible enough to spend the money wisely. And at the end of the day, anything that's a balance or brought out of balance by city or by government, it's going to be paid for by somebody at some point in time. And I'm kind of tired of, my taxes going up and whatnot for responsibility that way. So there's a lot of things that I need to know about to make sure that this is where I want to be. And I'm really concerned. So when union issues are brought before you, you need to remember that union is a business. It's the same as a business. If I threatened you every time you didn't use my services, how would you feel about that? I was concerned, with the comments that Tom brought forth, and I spoke with this one-on-one, so never will I bring an issue by any means of disrespect. But, on Andy's job, let's say at High Side, there was 250 people that were going to be on that job. If you use union issue and union pay for the entire project, 3 of you voted no because you wanted to represent your unions over, let's say, 250 people. 5% of all the public, we have 80,000 people, 5% is 4,000 people. 6% or 8% was 6,000 people. You guys are making decisions and voting for 6% of the population, where let's say 90% of the population is going to have to pay the bill on what it is that you believe in. So I've got a strong opinion of that because I live it, I feel it. At the end of the day, whatever my expenses are, I have to make the same amount of money. And all I simply do is pass the bill on to those that are underneath me. I have to make the same amount of money. So your influence to help some people is going to offset and hurt so many other people. So I'm out of time.
There you have it. Tom Kirk, he's talking about these labor unions these labor unions. And look, City Manager Tim Gleason, he spoke at the meeting and he said that he plans to survey the developers, the business community, and the labor to hear their thoughts on mandating a prevailing wage. He will hear the exact same opinions from them as he heard from Tom Kirk, but, go ahead, waste your time. Right? People want cheaper houses in Bloomington. And the way you do that is by increasing supply. Now, I'm not saying that you have to, give them a bunch of, rebates or do everything in your possible, go above and beyond to get this private developer to develop. I'm not saying that, but let the guy use his own work, like his own labor, right? If he wants to use his own labor, then let him use his own labor. He will hear the exact same opinions, Tim Gleason, when he goes out and he surveys the business community and surveys developers. So the city has a few choices. Number one, I like how Diane Benjamin from BLN News lays this out. Number one, quit giving rebates and incentives so prevailing wage isn't an issue. There you go. So don't give incentives to these private developers. Don't give rebates. Let capitalism do its thing. And you don't have to give them all kinds of incentives. Just stop it. Just stop it. So prevailing wage isn't an issue. So you don't have to use these labor unions that are preferred by the government. Number 2, realize government can't tell private developers who to hire even with rebates. So even if the rebates exist, even if the incentives exist, you still can't tell a private developer who he can use when doing the work. It's just not the way America's supposed to be. Or number 3, you could go full communist and demand prevailing wage, and ultimately what you're going to wind up doing is ending all the investments here in Bloomington, and nobody's going to want to come here because they'll know, oh yeah, that city of Bloomington, what they do, they force you to use labor unions, and I'm not going to do that because I won't make money. We live in reality. We live in reality. All right, shifting gears, do want to talk about Bloomington, the second cannabis dispensary. So I was out at Tailgate in Tallboy. Somebody parked out there, I guess, for the concert, and they came up to me and they said, yeah, I had to park in front of this cookies thing. I don't think it was open or anything like that. I'm excited to take my grandkids to this new cookie shop, though. I'm not a big fan of what's that one cookie shop? I forget what it's called. Crumble. This is what the woman was telling me. She goes, I'm not a big fan of Crumble because they're a little pricey. She goes, maybe these guys will be cheaper. So this should tell you all you really need to know. This cookies place that's on the west side of Bloomington near that Walmart outlet mall there, they're opening up in July. And there's an article in Yahoo Finance. So this is the second cannabis dispensary. This is what the article in Yahoo Finance says. Illinois can expect even more cookies, flour in July. I don't know. As the company opens its Illinois flagship store in the vibrant college town of Bloomington. Just as Revolution cultivated the flower of enlightened dispensary shops, it also will nurture and harvest flower for, I guess flower is weed. I don't know. For cookies. Flagship location and all cookies shops and other dispensaries that carry cookies products in Illinois. I don't know. The problem here that I saw was the vibrant college town. They're clearly targeting college students, which I don't know. Maybe you think college kids smoking dope all day is a great idea. I don't think it is. I think that they're supposed to be there learning, and smoking dope all day, probably not great. Right. But they're obviously targeting college students. In fact, they can even ride the bus there for free. And then my encounter with this woman, she was an elderly woman. She said that she was going to take her grandkids there. Well, she didn't know that it was a dispensary popping up. She just saw the name Cookies and she assumed it was a cookie shop. And yeah, I think that they're targeting kids with this dispensary and with this marketing. This company is most certainly targeting college students, college kids, but we're talking people fresh out of high school here, folks, right? With this, with weed, they're targeting them. You can even take the bus there for free. So yeah, I don't know. I don't like the name. I don't think that they should have named it Cookies, right? I mean, here's my thing. These vape cartridges, they say that you can't have the flavor in them and it's nicotine. So why is it okay for marijuana dispensaries to like name all of these things like purple dream, or that's targeting children. So I don't know. Maybe it's because their products make you want to eat some cookies. Munchies, right? I don't smoke, but there's one time where I did, and that was like the immediate effect was just wanting to eat all the time. Maybe that's contributing to the obesity problem. I don't know. 309-451-9299. I've got to take a break. We're going to be back here on the Morning Buzz. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. Now, we do know that those free safes that the Bloomington Police Department were giving out had a problem with humidity control and moisture control in the safe, so it could wind up where your gun is rusty. Somebody texted in and they were kind of all upset and they said, um, Jackie Beyer asking the city if they were going to be held responsible for the rusty guns, if there were rusty guns in these safes that they were given out for free. Somebody texted in and said, "Let's mention the safes were free so she could go buy her own." That's what I've been saying from the get, right? We shouldn't be giving out free safes as a Bloomington Police Department. Let's have law-abiding citizens get their own safes. Safes, right, for your firearm. There's not one size that fits all. Some safes will be like you can't you can't just give out a certain safe. Like you should take time and buy a safe that is properly suited to you and to your firearms. And having the government get out there and sell all of these safes, or not sell, but give these out via a state grant. So they said, let's mention the safes were for free. I've got to clarify this. This was given to a grant. It was a $500,000 grant. And this is according to WMBD. They said that it was a grant, funds from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. And they did a partnership with the NGO. Now, I'm sure some of that money came from the NGO. It's called Be Smart Organization. This is Mom's Demand Action, which is a partisan. They're Democrat, mainly Democrat, non-government organization, i.e., their government organization, right? So this happens all of the time. It's the same thing with Planned Parenthood. The government, they'll partner with these NGOs and then they give out all of this money, but that money isn't free money. It comes from somewhere. And being that they partnered with the state on this, the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, this means that it came from your like taxpayer dollars. Okay, at least some of it, maybe a majority of it, I don't know, came from the non-government organization called Be Smart, which is, affiliated with Moms Demand Action. So clearly a Democrat-led organization. So look, folks, I mean, the government needs to butt out, and law-abiding citizens and people who legally carry firearms probably don't need a free safe anyway. And, I get like a free safe. Oh, that's cool. Like me, safes for guns are very expensive. Me, it would have been cool to go get one. I'm glad I didn't. I have my own safes, right? Because any law abiding citizen has safes for their guns, for their firearms. It's just facts, right? When you get a gun, a lot of people like go out and get a safe, especially if you have little ones running around. Now, if you don't, for some odd reason, that's completely your choice. It's not being smart, but they can't force you to have a safe. Okay, yes, they were giving these out, and but like I said, the police department should be in the business of catching the bad guys, not giving out free safes. Somebody who would use a safe is definitely not out there committing crimes. Okay, it's just they're not the violent ones. If somebody shows up for a free safe, I promise you they're not the violent ones. Okay. Do want to shift gears here on the Morning Buzz, and let's talk a little bit about this story coming out of the Midwest. Midwest teachers, they're holding this conference, and they were talking about how they could quietly teach sex ed and gender transition to students without their parents' knowledge. So teachers said that they wanted to work quietly and ensure that trans kids have what they need. This means little Timmy shows up to school one day and the teacher hands him a bag with a dress in it, and little Timmy can go into the bathroom and put a dress on without your knowledge as a parent. I do want to talk about this story because it involves teachers from Ohio, Iowa, Illinois, Michigan, and they got together for this conference. And guess who was hosting this conference? A government acolyte through this Midwest and Plains Equity Assistance Center. Because, of course, that, That sounds so nice. It sounds so nice. Surely they're not trying to get these trans identified students to transition behind their parents' backs. No, they wouldn't be doing that with federal government money, with your taxpayer money. All right, I'm going to be back here on the Morning Buzz. Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in to the live stream. If you're watching right now, smash that like button. Do it right now. Do it right now. Smash the heart, smash the like button. Share this video out with your friends right now. Now, what I want to hit here coming up is going to kind of get into the weeds, but you have to stick with me. Okay, this is just another example of government doing this shady stuff uh, under the guise of, safety or equity, these fluffy names. So this is a fluffy name. It's called Midwest Plains Equity Assistance Center. It's an organization, and they discuss how to help trans identified students. Notice how they don't put the word trans in it. Notice how they don't talk about education in it. Notice how they don't talk about sex ed in this title. It's just Midwest and Plains Equity Assistance Center. Okay. So they are an organization that is designed to help trans students who come under attack from conservative states and legislators who have passed new laws about gender identity, pronouns, access to bathrooms, men competing in women's sports, and parental rights. So there have been a lot of states who have passed legislation that said, we're going to ban child transition here in the state of Montana. There's been a lot of states like this. Now, this Midwest Plains and Equity Assistance Center, this is all funded by the Department of Education, i.e., your taxpayer dollars are going towards workshops where teachers across these different states, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, and Iowa, plus a few others, where they get together and they talk about how they can quietly transition your child without your knowledge as a parent. So teachers spoke at this conference about being subversive to the rules and how they can adopt their own personal code of ethics. In addition, other teachers explained how they can help hide a trans identified student's new gender and name change from their parents. This is a report done by the Daily Mail. You need to be careful of these diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinators, specifically ones here locally. Find out who they are and keep your kids far away from these people. Kimberly Martin, she's the diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator for Royal Oak School in Michigan. She discussed tactics on how to keep child sex changes with students a secret from their parents. So if they want to do sex changes, if they want to dress in women's clothes, little Timmy, little boy, and you as a parent you won't be cued in on that. Okay, they're not obligated to tell you that little Timmy wants to be a girl and change his name to uh, Teresa. Okay, that they're not obligated, and in fact, they are going to hide it from you, and they're going to give little Timmy a dress as soon as he gets to school. This is what they're talking about. These are already policies in place in her district. I know that there's policies in place when it comes to Unit 5, District 87. Another teacher bragged about how indoctrinating her own students by taking them to protests and marches. So they can take them to protests and marches as a way to affirm their identity. And you won't know. Like during school hours, they can take your kid to a protest or to a march. Okay, that's what they're talking about right now. This Midwest Plains and Equity Center or whatever. Now there was somebody from Iowa, and she talked about in this discussion that they had this workshop with this government acolyte, how Governor Kim Reynolds signing legislation into law that prohibits men from competing in women's sports team, and she just slammed into her and like this is clearly partisan. Shea Martin, and it's all federal taxpayer money. Like, come on, we're paying for these people to get together and talk about how they can hide sex changes that your students are undergoing from you. So, Shea Martin, she's a far left progressivist teacher in Ohio. She uses they, them pronouns, and she told the group of teachers that they need to work quietly sometimes to make sure that trans kids have what they need. The guy from this MAP group, the um, assistance group, the Midwest Plains group, who is funded by the government, this group is funded by the government, expressed the need to speak about sexuality with elementary age students. So you need to talk about sex ed with elementary ed students as young as 5 years old. This is what's going on. Like with your money, it's funded, it's well funded with the Department of Ed. Um, we all need to be aware of this and be sure that your kid isn't transitioning behind your back as a parent. Um, we're going to be back. Be sure to text in 309-451-9299. You can also call in. I will be back here, and we've got all kinds of things to cover. Good morning. Yes, the federal government, the DOJ, they're in on it, folks. They have been funding this group to talk about with teachers from across the Midwest. I'm talking Illinois, Michigan, Iowa, Ohio. These Midwest folk, right? They're all getting together and they're discussing how to help trans-identified students go about gender transition. So if little Timmy shows up to school, what should the teachers do if he wants to be a girl? Well, the teachers are going to bring him a dress. They're going to call him Teresa. Behind your back, the parent, there was a workshop. Daily Mail exposes this. I've got the story next here on the Morning Buzz. Good morning, folks. We've got so much to hit today. There's just been a lot of news out there. Hunter Biden getting these misdemeanor charges, a slap on the wrist. Look, folks, if this shocked you when this came out yesterday, it shouldn't have. But if it did, you don't realize what point of the movie we're in. We live in a two-tiered justice system. Hunter Biden will not be going to prison like he should have been for this gun charge. So basically, what he did, he lied on his background check. He lied on his firearm application. And he said that he wasn't addicted to drugs. But that same year that he applied for this firearm, he said that he was smoking crack every 15 minutes. So there you have it. If you or I were to do something like that, we would be imprisoned probably for 10 years. For 10 years. And not to mention the tax fraud that went on. These were all slaps in the wrist. What's really disturbing for me is that on the DOJ website, they have an entire page, literally an entire page, explaining the deal Hunter Biden got isn't supposed to be used for the gun charges. So the DOJ is trying to say that uh, like they're trying to even backpedal on the deal, on the plea deal. They're trying, I mean, this is an absolute joke. Hunter Biden will never see any charges from the DOJ. The laptop has been unplugged. He's never going to see any kind of charges from it ever. The DOJ is violating its own internal policies, mind you. There's something called an Ashcroft memo. And this Ashcroft memo requires you to charge the highest provable offense and seek consistent sentences with other cases brought by the DOJ. So they didn't even try to charge him with the highest provable offense. They just took the plea automatically. They pled this down all the way down to misdemeanors to where he's going to have probation, right? Ridiculous. Ridiculousness. We are going to get to some comments here. Good morning, Joanne. Good morning. Good morning. I appreciate you listening. The Hunter Biden plea deal didn't shock, but peeved me off. Anyone else would have been thrown into prison for lying about drugs on a background check. Also, this isn't a 5-year investigation. It takes days to figure out. Yes. Takes days to figure out. Yeah, especially considering that Hunter Biden very publicly said that he was smoking crack, quote, every 15 minutes. uh, so he admitted to being addicted to drugs. And I mean, he said he wasn't addicted to drugs on his form. Um, quick story time. Anyone else would be thrown into prison for lying about this. So I know somebody who went into a psychiatric type facility for a few days um, about 10 years ago, and they are unable to obtain a firearm. So here in the state of Illinois, there's a process that you have to go through to get a FOID card, and they weren't asked about it on their FOID card application. They don't ask you outright if you've had issues with mental illness or if you've ever been checked into a psychiatric facility for more than a few days. Um, but they find out, right? So that should concern you in and of itself. So I know somebody who went through all of this and they still can't get a firearm to this day because they went and they sought help from a medical professional, therapist for their mental health issues. And it was over 10 years ago. And that's insane to me. The fact that Hunter Biden he can still obtain firearms after this. He can obtain firearms even after this misdemeanor because that's not part of it, right? He doesn't. He can go get a firearm. Like that. That's wild to me. We have people in this country who are trying to get a firearm, are being punished because they sought help from a psychiatric facility, got better, and they still can't obtain firearms. Uh, 10 years after the fact from seeking help for their mental health issues. The gun laws in this state specifically are anti-American, anti-Second Amendment, and the fact that we've got Hunter Biden out there who can still obtain a firearm even after publicly admitting that he smokes crack every 15 minutes, it just baffles me, and it's very clear that we're in a two-tier justice system. Sets a new standard. Thanks, Democrats. Now I have more reason to concealed carry. I think. Yes, Brian. The fact that these teachers are openly saying they're quietly doing this behind our back is disturbing. Talk about quiet part out loud. Yes. So I think what happened, how Daily Mail got this story about the Midwest teachers gathering, communicating about how they're quietly going to transition your trans identified students behind parents' backs. Um, Daily Mail, I think, had an insider because they have direct quotes from this discussion. So I'm sure they had an insider go into this discussion. I don't know that. Daily Mail doesn't um, necessarily say they had an insider infiltrate that organization and that meeting and these talks, these discussions, but I wouldn't be shocked. The laptop has been unplugged. Don't expect Hunter Biden to be charged with anything. Anything else from the DOJ. The laptop has been unplugged and he will never be charged for any of it. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz, 7:06 a.m. What have we been talking about, man? I mean, if you've missed the 6 o'clock hour, I'm sorry. Because that 6 o'clock hour was totally rad. Bloomington Council meeting recap. A few things we touched on were those safes that the city gave out and they sucked. And here's my take on the whole thing. Let's stick to catching bad guys and let's not be in the business of giving free safes out to the public via our state taxpayer dollars. This was a grant for $500,000. Nothing is free. It was a grant given by the state to do this. So this is a free safes, right? And it's very important that we make note of what kind of non-government organizations that the state teamed up with These are partisan organizations, Democrat-led organizations, to try to get people these safes. It's very clear they don't think that you, the law-abiding citizen, should have your gun, right? They don't think that you are smart enough to keep your gun in a safe. Like, that's the bottom line. And we talked about Bloomington. I'm praying that they don't go full communist and demand a prevailing wage, which would ultimately end investments made here in Bloomington. There was a private developer who's speaking at public comment about the housing development going up on East Washington Street. Then we also talked about a cannabis dispensary in the west side of Bloomington, right there by the Walmart, and how they're marketing it almost towards children, with naming it cookies, which I find disturbing. You shouldn't call it cookies. Actually, somebody has already mistaken this place for a cookie shop and has said that she wants to take her grandkids there. Probably not a great idea. But they are explicitly trying to target college students. They aren't even being quiet about that. They definitely want to target college students when it comes to this new cookies dispensary. So we talked about all of that in the 6 o'clock hour. What are we talking about in the 7 o'clock hour? Midwest teachers. They're holding a conference to, quote, quietly teach explicit sex ed and gender transitioning for trans students without their parents' knowledge. Teachers said that they need to work subversively and quietly, sometimes, to make sure that trans kids have what they need. Oh boy. Next, secret audio captures this UK teacher going completely mental on this 13-year-old girl for saying what? This 13-year-old says there's two genders. Ah! Where'd you get that idea from? The teacher has gone completely mental, and she goes after this 13-year-old girl for saying there's two genders. And then also later, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, he put the Biden administration on blast, telling reporters about this recent legal action, if you want to call it legal action, that the U.S. Department of Justice took against Hunter Biden. And Kevin McCarthy says this is a two-tiered justice system. Hunter got a slap on the wrist. That's it. If you or I were to do what he did, we would be going to prison for a very long time. All right, let's get into it. The Midwest teachers, they had this online workshop last week, and reportedly they were devising plans and trading tips on how to help trans identifying students undergoing sex changes without their parents' consent. So the way this would play out, you've got a kid, you send them to, say, Unit 5, okay? A teacher, if this kid, little Timmy, says that he's a girl, a teacher would bring a dress to school and affirm that child's identity by giving the dress to the kid at school and calling him Teresa behind your back. They are under no obligation to tell you that this child is doing this and wants to be called Teresa and things like that. So, not saying Unit 5 is doing that, but that's an example that could play out. I'm sure, I wouldn't doubt Unit 5 is doing this. I know for a fact that there's a Lake County, Illinois teacher who is partaking in this conference. So the Daily Mail, I don't know how they got this story. I'm assuming that they had an insider there at the conference taking part in these discussions because they've got direct quotes here from teachers who were at this conference. So the Daily Mail reports that about 30 teachers from Midwestern states held an online 4-hour workshop hosted by Midwest Plains Equity Assistance Center. Oh, well, that sounds so nice. That sounds so nice. I love how they don't put trans in there. They don't put sex ed in there. No, this is just Midwest and Plains Equity Assistance Center. And their whole goal here is to help trans identified students who come under attack in conservative states. We've got these legislators, they're passing these new laws banning child sex change surgeries in their state because they're dangerous. They're banning things like gender identity pronouns, access to bathrooms, men competing in women's sports, parental rights. There's a lot of conservative states who are passing these new laws that take aim at these issues. So this online workshop, this is so important. You're paying for it via the DOE, the Department of Ed. And this included teachers from Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, and Iowa, and a few others. So during the discussion, get this, the teachers were talking about being subversive to the rules and how they needed to, quote, adopt their own code of ethics. So they aren't obligated to follow a code of ethics that the district lays out on their website that you can read. They have their own code of ethics. Okay. And the teachers explained how they can try to help hide a trans identified student's new gender and name change from their parents. This is what Midwest teachers are doing. So, somebody named Kimberly, she's a DEI coordinator. And anytime I say DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, that should send off alarm bells because these people hate you. So, she's out of Michigan. And she talked about tactics to try to keep child sex changes with students a secret from parents and how her district has already put these policies in place. Wow. Another teacher bragged about indoctrinating her own students by taking them to protests and marches. So, in order to affirm their identity, they have to go out and march and scream and, I don't know, gay pride parades and things like that. Are they doing this during school hours? Are they taking your kids without your knowledge to a protest or to a march to affirm their identity? So then there was another one. She's a far left progressive teacher in Ohio. She uses they, them pronouns. And she said this part, and this is the key here. We need to work subversively and quietly sometimes to make sure that trans kids have what they need. So the guy from this organization that hosted the whole thing, he's paid by the government to be there. It's called the Midwest Plains Equity Assistance Center, right? He's the government acolyte. He expressed that they need to speak about sexuality with elementary age students as young as 5 years old. She explained that teachers need to take caution in reinforcing that heterosexuality is the norm. But the facts are the fact that is the norm. Statistically, I think it's like 7%, if that, of the population identifies as LGBTQ. Uh, and that's including IA. So the A in LGBTQIA is ally. And that's just somebody who is an ally of the gay community, of the LGBTQ community. So they're not gay, but they claim that they're an ally. So then they're also counted in that statistic, the 7%. So that is probably much lower. It's true to make the statement heterosexuality is the norm. Statistically, that is the norm. When over 90% of the population identifies as heterosexual, that's the norm. Okay. So there was a teacher from Illinois, Lake County, Illinois. She took her time to slam conservative parents and teachers that want to see parental rights policies adopted in the state. Her name is Yesenia Jimenez Captain. She's the Director of Educational Services at Woodland School District in Lake County, Illinois. So there you have it, folks. We have federal government under Title IV. They've secured $8.5 million of your taxpayer money from the Department of Ed to operate across Midwest states in Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. They are working to try to come up with new ways to hide your kids' gender transition from you. It's June in America. I want to shift gears here. It's understandable that you would assume that this is only exclusive to this country in America, this LGBTQ stuff. It's not. There is a middle school classroom in England where they're just as woke and mental. Really, I have some secret audio here that was obtained, and TPUSA puts this out here. TPUSA UK So let's take a listen to this. A teacher just going completely insane on a 13-year-old girl who commits the ultimate crime of saying, oh, there's two genders.
How dare you?
If they want to identify as a cat or something, then they're like genuinely unwell. And they've gone, yeah, they're crazy.
You were questioning their identity.
I wasn't a question. I was just saying about the gender. I didn't say anything about them.
But where did you get this idea from? There's only two genders.
I just think it's my opinion. That is my opinion. If I respect their opinion, can't they respect my opinion?
It is not an opinion.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
but it's not an opinion you can have.
Loads of people think there's only two genders.
There's only a boy and a girl.
Literally. There's no other private part. There's only two.
Gender is not linked to do with the, not linked to the parts that you were born with. Gender is about how you identify, which is what I said right from the very beginning of the
I just don't
lesson.
agree with that. So why should I have to listen to it?
Biological sex, there is actually three biological sexes, because you can be born intersex. You can be born with male and female body parts or hormones.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, there's three. There's not 300.
Doesn't mean
Yeah, there's three. I'm talking about biological sex. In terms of gender, there are lots of genders. There is transgender, there is agender, people that don't believe they have a gender at all.
yeah, but you can't have that.
No, you can't have that. It's not a law.
Yeah, but it's not a law, but it's our opinion. We just don't agree with it. We just think it's all just.
If you have a vagina, you're a girl. If you have a penis, you're a boy. That's
Yeah.
it.
But cisgender is not necessarily the way to be. You were talking about the fact that cisgender is the norm, that you identify with the gender, that with the sexual order that you're born with,
Yeah.
or you're with. That's
Yeah.
basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
Which is really despicable.
How? When it's
If I
literally
called
true.
my mum right now, my mum would
Same.
be on my side.
If I called my mum, she'd say.
Well, that's very sad as well then.
How is it?
Loads of people agree with that. There's only a small majority of people who actually think that.
And why do you think we have so many problems in the world with homophobia?
Yeah, but
Because
that's
of
not
people
homophobia.
expressing.
That's gender.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm
it
fine
is.
with lesbians and gay people.
Same.
I've got nothing against them.
Yeah, same.
But gender is, there is a link between it, and you're
How?
saying that people
There
can't
isn't one.
change
No, they
who they want
can't.
to be.
They can't. Unless you
You
get
are
a
so
penis
wrong.
attached. No, I'm not.
You're confusing sex and gender.
No, I'm not though. Because
Yes,
if you have
you
a
are.
vagina, you're a girl. If you have a penis, you're a boy.
Yeah, you can't have a vagina and be a girl, but then
Gender
if
is
they
Unless you
about-
get surgery, and even then,
Gender
because
is
you've got
about
those genes.
how you identity.
Okay. So she goes on, the teacher, and ultimately what she does, she says that she's going to send this little girl um to the principal's office, essentially, to get re-educated. Yes. So before we get to the teacher, I know some of you are wondering, Kat, you said that this is Church of England. So this is a Church of England school in Sussex, England, and this is an 8th grade classroom. And this 13-year-old girl said, but if someone said they identified as a cat, wouldn't that be lunacy? You can't affirm that. And, you're thinking to yourself, this is a Christian school? Yes, the Church of England. I don't know what's going on with them, but it shouldn't shock you when I say the same church refers to God using they, them pronouns. So there's that. This student, she had the foolish idea of expressing not only her opinion, but the truth that there are only two genders. That is not an opinion. That is a fact. That is the truth. Gender is not linked to parts that you're born with. This is what the teacher says. Gender is about how you identify, which is said, which I said right from the very beginning of this lesson. So that's what she was teaching, a lesson about this. My favorite part of this whole clip is when she said, where'd you get that idea from? Look, folks, this little girl, right? The reason why she's saying this is because there's 2,000 plus years of science that this new gender stuff has only been around for maybe 5 years. 2,000 plus years of science tells this little girl that there's two genders. And then the worst part about all of it was that this teacher in England said, hey, if you don't like it, then you have to go to a different school. I'm reporting you to the principal. You need to have a proper educational conversation about equality, diversity, and inclusion, because I'm not having that expressed in my lesson. Now, understandably, right, one of this girl's parents got very upset, and the parents were baffled that an opposing viewpoint would be shut down by a school, but in such a threatening and aggressive manner. She said that you shouldn't even go to school here. And I mean, look, I just can't even deal with this re-education. She literally wants the kid to be thrown out of the classroom and re-educated. The parent said, regardless of the subject, education should serve to build awareness of differing viewpoints, to widen understanding of the subject. It shouldn't be a case of indoctrination. Yeah, it shouldn't be a case of indoctrination, and it wasn't always like this. I want to go back to a time where there were tomboys and there were boys who liked to sing and dance in musicals, okay? That doesn't mean that you are the opposite or like the opposite sex. It does not mean that. Just because you like girl things, just because you like boy things, it doesn't mean that you are that opposite sex. All right, I have to go to break. I have to go to break. We're going to talk about Kevin McCarthy and how he says we're in a two-tier justice system. I can't believe what Hunter Biden's attorney said when it came to these misdemeanor charges, the slap on the wrist. Here we go. Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Flip all this on Trump name, and everyone of his family members would be heavily prosecuted. Yeah. Could you imagine if Don Jr. were to do something like this? Totally agree with you, Kat. Then there are parental rights. .org started back in 2005, and we have been fighting tirelessly to get parental rights amendment to our Constitution. Joanne sharing some information about getting parental rights policies implemented in the state of Illinois. Joanne? Question mark. State of Illinois. If you're watching right now, go ahead, smash that like button. It really helps us out. We are going to be talking about Hunter Biden next and these misdemeanor charges and what Kevin McCarthy had to say about them. I don't know your thoughts on Kevin. I haven't seen anything that Kevin McCarthy has really done that has made me hate him. There's some things that he's done that I don't like, but man, I mean, Kevin McCarthy coming out as strong as he did with these reporters in regards to Hunter Biden, this is great. I think that this was something that was needed. We don't even have the US Constitution website. Okay. To take within our state as well. Yeah. The parental rights. That is something that we can look to when it comes to parental rights. They are constantly trying to attack this in the state of Illinois. Just recently, there was a grant out there that they decided to withhold. This grant is for underprivileged kids to try to go to a private school. I think it's the Invest in Kids Act, and what it does, it there's grants where these kids can go to private schools, and they got rid of that here in the state of Illinois. Okay, folks, if you're watching right now, you can go ahead, smash the like button. I've got some text here that I want to address. And now, the state of Illinois, they want to hold your kids for longer periods of time and to indoctrinate them, steal them away from their parents' influence. Yes. So there's all kinds of things in the state of Illinois right now that talk about how they want to do preschool. They want them younger. They want the state schooling, like it's it's all schooling provided by the state, and they want the kids to stay there 8-hour plus days. And I don't know, when I was a kid, and I look back on it now and I think about it and I'm like, there was such an incentive to try to do all of these extracurriculars, and maybe your kids are in all of these extracurriculars. I think that there's such an incentive out there pushed by teachers and administration to partake in all of these extracurriculars because they want your kids there all day. Hunter Biden, the laptop has been unplugged. Don't expect any kind of charges, any more charges to come out of this. Uh, Before I took the break, I was talking about this little girl. She says that there's two genders, and the teacher in England, she goes, "How could you say such a thing? Who told you that? 2,000 plus years of science?" And then the teacher goes as far as to say, "You know what? You shouldn't be in our school anymore. You need to go to a different school. I'm reporting you to the principal, and you need to have a proper educational conversation about equality, diversity, and inclusion because we're not having that expressed here in my classroom." This is a 13-year-old girl, and she's talking to this little girl about re educating her. What? Like re education camps? Come on now. Um, Wow, that story just really blew me away. So does this one. The deal Kevin McCarthy is referring to here in this clip is the Hunter Biden pled to 2 federal misdemeanor counts, no felonies. He neglected to pay taxes, and he entered into a diversion on a federal gun charge. So he was not charged with a federal gun charge, although he should have been. Hunter Biden's attorney, Chris Clark, reacted to the plea, commenting, saying, "With the announcement of the 2 agreements between my client, Hunter Biden, and the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Delaware, it's my understanding that the 5-year investigation into Hunter has been resolved." So they're saying it's done, it's over with. Let's take a listen to Kevin McCarthy here and what he had to say about the Hunter Biden misdemeanor counts that he was ultimately charged with and pled guilty to. Here we go. Uh, Go.
You are the president's leading political opponent. The DOJ tries to literally put you in jail and give you prison time. If you are the president's son, you get a sweetheart deal. Now, this does nothing to our investigation. It actually should enhance our investigations because the DOJ should not be able to withhold any information now, saying that because of pending investigation, they should be able to provide Chairman Comer with any information that he requires.
There you have it, Kevin McCarthy talking about how we are in a 2-tier justice system and how now with Comer looking into Joe Biden over this Ukrainian oligarch giving him millions of dollars as a bribe, right, in exchange for favorable policy and to assist in firing this a prosecutor in Ukraine. It's a mess. It's a mess. So now, right? If there is no pending investigation into his son, Hunter Biden, that might have to deal with his Ukrainian oligarch bribe, then they should be able to provide everything about that because the FBI, the DOJ, they've been saying that they can't provide information because there's a pending investigation taking place. Now that this is over and has been resolved, then we should expect charges brought against Joe Biden for taking bribes as the then vice president. The DOJ website, this is one thing I want to know, literally has an entire page explaining that the deal Hunter Biden got isn't supposed to be used for guns. This is an absolute joke. This is an absolute joke. If you or I were to pull the garbage that Hunter Biden did, we would be in prison for over 10 years. So he lied on a background check form to purchase a firearm. In that same year that he purchased that firearm and lied on his background check, he publicly went out there and said, quote, smoking crack every 15 minutes. Like, he was smoking crack. He admitted to this publicly that he was smoking crack. And on the background check form says, have you ever been addicted to drugs? And he said no. You've got to be kidding me with this. The DOJ is also violating their own internal policies. There's something called an Ashcroft memo. And this actually requires the DOJ to charge people with the highest provable offense. So they didn't even bother to seek these charges, the highest provable offense. They didn't even bother. They just let it down immediately to misdemeanors. And this prosecution is just an absolute laughable joke. Thousands have been sent to prison for long terms for these same charges. This is a two-tier justice system. Another clip I want to play for you. Tucker Carlson going after the political establishment, the Washington, D.C. political establishment. And this is really good. He talks about it here. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
There was no felony. Hunter Biden, who broke federal gun laws, can still carry a gun. It's like it all never happened. In fact, the Justice Department just baptized Hunter Biden, a lifetime of sins washed away in an instant. It was a secular miracle. Most miraculous of all, Hunter Biden somehow escaped a FARA charge. FARA is the Foreign Agent Registration Act, and it is exactly what its name suggests. Under federal law, if you are acting as an agent of a foreign nation in Washington, you are required to register with our government to let everybody know. Well, for decades, pretty much nobody in Washington did register under FARA, and precisely no one was ever prosecuted for it. No one. But starting several years ago, the Justice Department began sending people to prison on FARA violations. The official explanation was, we're cracking down on foreign influence in Washington. And of course, privately, everyone in Washington laughed. They knew that was absurd. In fact, it's the opposite of the truth. Foreign powers have never had more power in Washington. Their agents are everywhere, in every federal agency and throughout business, down to and including in executive positions at various social media companies. The Biden administration knows all of this, and it's not a problem. In fact, it's their policy.
There you have it, Tucker Carlson just completely obliterating the Washington political establishment. The rules definitely apply to you folks, including the rules that you might not even know exist. But to Democrats in power, members of their families, their political allies, not so much. Those rules don't apply to them. I'm going to be back with Scott's Takes on the Morning Buzz. You can text in, see me live in studio. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Robin's right over there. Hunter decided to be a cool dad. Is he a good dad? I don't know. Scott Robbins on the morning bus.
Well, I mean, the fatherhood in the Biden family doesn't exactly rise to the cream of the crop, does it? So Hunter Biden, by the way, we heard about the bogus charges against him, and everybody know. Look, you can see right through that, can't you? I mean, of course you can. I mean, it's almost laughable. It's a joke. I mean, the two-tier justice system is a real thing, and it just happened again. And Hunter Biden is the recipient of that. I mean, no one else that and particularly in his position. I mean, again, I hate playing this game, but let's do it anyway. Don Jr. does this and gets the same sentence. What do you think the outcry would be? You could hear him screaming from the mountaintops.
No one's above the
Hunter,
law.
of course, right, blah, blah, blah. So Hunter Biden has been in some child support dispute too, with the stripper that he impregnated, this London Roberts. The mother of his 4-year-old daughter.
He refuses to acknowledge.
The Biden family does not acknowledge at all. So Biden had brought a case seeking to have the agreement that he pay child support of $20,000 a month reduced because he now claims his finances have been reduced and he doesn't have a steady income. But before that could be decided, the judge wanted to see what his finances were. Now that, of course, could pose a problem. Given the allegations of influence peddling and checks coming from all over the place, you know how this works. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure why he brought this matter to begin with, because it could reveal a lot. But her attorney had accused Biden of stalling, not turning over his financials. Mm-hmm. The judge indicated that she was not happy with what the Biden team had turned over, saying there was excessive redaction, and told them, hey, you refile. Well, guess what happened on Friday? Biden was finally deposed. He flew in on a private plane, rode up in a 5-car motorcade, not exactly looking destitute, folks. He also had to deal with the presence of London Roberts, the stripper who he impregnated. She showed up at the deposition. So they made an agreement before it went to a full-blown judge ruling on it. He agreed to her $20,000 monthly child support payments being slashed after she showed up in person. So some of that, I guess, it's reduced to just $5,000 now. That's the settlement they made. So it's not to, they would probably made a settlement for more, but that's what they settled on. So $5,000 a month. He hasn't been paying the $20,000 anyway. So I would assume you're looking at it like any money you can get at all. Sometimes you bang your head against the wall in these types of situations, but that's what happened. That's where it is. Hunter Biden not going to be charged with anything, of course. And now the child support thing has been reduced. I thought he was making a bunch of money with his artwork.
Yeah, his artwork. And
I mean, wasn't that true? I mean, that's some of it.
One of those misdemeanors, he wasn't paying taxes. So you'd think all the money that he was saving, not paying his taxes, could have gone towards, paying for his kid. But
one would have thought anyway, right? One would have thought. So now we turn to Joe Biden, right? Joe Biden, who was asked about this yesterday, and this is how father of Hunter Biden answered the question. Then we'll talk about it. Here we go.
I'm very proud of my son.
He's very proud of his son, and they were asking about, hey, what about this? This seems like a bad idea, two-tier justice system. Well, I'm very proud of my son. Now, here's the thing. You love your children. I've got a daughter. I love my daughter. My daughter commits a crime like this. What you say is, I love my daughter, however, very disappointed in this. And you can leave it alone at that point.
No.
Proud? What are you proud of?
He is proud because he got away with it. He got away with it like Joe Biden gets away with all of his nonsense.
But why the word proud? I'm proud of myself. How are you proud of him? What is there to be proud about with this guy? I mean, you can say you love him and you're there to help him and you could be a supportive father on that area, but proud? Holy smokes. Weird choice of words, I guess. Anyway, this beat goes on. The Hunter Biden's not, got a slap on the wrist, and that's about it. I want to go to this story real quick. COVID pandemic. We don't have to go back too far. We all remember the sick feeling in our stomach when all this was going on, right? Draconian governmental responses, mRNA, vaccine mandates. I know people personally who lost their jobs. They were working and they wouldn't get the vaccine. They didn't want the vaccine and they lost their jobs. That's what happened. Businesses were closed. Children's education was wrecked. While the unvaccinated were being blamed for the spread of the disease. Remember that? Joe Biden said it. It's a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Said it a million times. Well, it turns out, Kat, through discovered emails with CDC Director Walensky, who's a nervous wreck, by the way, she knew about the breakthrough infections in January of 2021. So did Anthony Fauci. But they knew it wasn't working. In other words, they knew it wasn't stopping the spread. But they continue to push vax mandates. It is remarkable what they're finding out about this. Now, will anybody be held accountable for any of this? Probably not. I mean, unless, of course, we finally get a Republican president. I mean, perhaps then they'll be launched into an investigation, hold these people accountable. They knew in 2021 that there were these breakthrough cases. And I can remember them lying to our face by saying, if you get this, you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
Rachel Maddow told us that. And every news organization on the planet said the same thing, and they were all lying.
Well, and
And
Scott,
most of them knew it.
you were a conspiracy theorist. You were a conspiracy theorist.
I can remember. I can clearly remember some of the hate rage mail that I got via social media. Blood on your hands. How do you sleep at night? Thousands of people are dying because of your misinformation. And it wasn't even misinformation on my part. It was like, is it okay to question this? Of course it is. Yeah, I got to question this.
Well, and then also remember people were saying, oh, this was they were testing bioweapons and things like that. We have a new report. I mean, this is all mainstream media stuff now. They said that the U.S. State Department, there was an investigator quoted in this report done by our U.S. government saying that China may have a weapon to shift the balance of world power. And they say that they were working on bioweapons when this leaked out of this Wuhan lab. So it's like,
yes.
Wait a second. So it did come from a Wuhan lab. And not only did it come from a Wuhan lab, but they were working on bioweapons with the coronavirus.
Yeah, and with their military looking over the shoulder of these scientists who were developing this.
Not only scientists were dying while they were researching these bioweapons. There were like researchers in the lab dying. They were like, oh, wow.
That's collateral damage. That's collateral damage. Well, it's going to happen. And also they were working on a cure or a vaccine for the coronavirus while they were creating it. Mm-hmm. In other words, you inflicted on other nations or other countries, and then you already have your antidote within your own country. And this is all stuff that's true. That, again, this went from a pangolin. Remember the pangolas? It leaped from them into the human population. Then I can remember them saying it was the U.S. military with their MREs. Remember that crazy story? That was crazy too. Everything, but it couldn't have been the Chinese government. It couldn't have been the Wuhan lab because we were funding it. Gosh dang. All right. This onion is far from being peeled. That's for sure. It's layer after layer, but the truth will eventually come out. Have a fantastic day. Another day with no rain either. We got rain. Rain's coming what, Sunday?
Sunday. I know. It's like drought out there.
Well, I mean, my farmer buddies are. Yeah. That is true. Just don't walk on it. You'll cut your feet. It's like walking on cactus right now. All right. See you later.
See you later, Scott Robbins.
Bye.
All right, folks. We'll be back here on the Morning Buzz. Don't miss Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins tonight at 8:00. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much. We are going to be hitting some local stories here coming up in the 8:00 hour, the Bloomington City Council meeting. I'm going to recap it for you. Those safes are a big deal. People got them for free. They weren't for free. It was a $500,000 grant from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, whatever. And they kind of jointly worked with this Be Smart organization, which is a Democrat-run organization. Come on, let's be real. They work with Moms Demand Action, which is a known Democrat nonprofit organization. And they teamed up with them. So our tax dollars went towards this grant, obviously, because some of it was funds from this branch of government, from this bureaucracy. And they gave money to the Bloomington Police Department to give out these safes. And citizens got these safes. And then all of a sudden, guns started looking rusty. And they were like, uh-oh, the moisture control in these safes was not up to speed. It was not good. So then there was somebody who went to the council meeting and said, "Hey, are you guys going to be responsible for my gun?" You know, government wants to take responsibility over your life when it comes to forcing you to have things. Now, they didn't force anybody to have these safes, but come on, let's be real. Government thinks it's their job to supply you with some sort of safe. Because law-abiding citizens and gun owners can't buy their own safes, I guess. But the Bloomington Police Department gave out these safes, and now people's weapons might be damaged because of this. So naturally, if you thought it was your responsibility to keep people safe from firearms, then maybe it should be your responsibility, being that those firearms were damaged in safes that you provided. Bloomington better not go full communist because they are now demanding prevailing wage for these unions, these labor unions. And look, if you are demanding this prevailing wage, what could happen here is people pull out of Bloomington and they don't invest in Bloomington. Now, a private developer spoke at public comment about this housing development. I've got that, plus a cannabis dispensary is going up, and I think they might be targeting kids. It's called Cookies. I know for a fact they are targeting college students. That's clear, but I don't know. A name like Cookies? I don't know. I don't like it. We've got all of that and more ahead on the Morning Buzz. So, if you were hoping to get a job at BlackRock as a recruiter, check back at the end of the day because there's probably going to be a position open. Soon to be former recruiter was caught on tape, folks, bragging about how much they profit off of Ukraine and how little it costs for them to buy a senator here in the United States. So, if you ever viewed BlackRock as this, like, this is hilarious. We've got somebody who literally is from BlackRock, and I mean, this is just incredible to see this guy on tape. I've got the tape coming up here at in the 8 o'clock hour, and BlackRock is literally out there bragging about how they are making money off the war between Ukraine and Russia, and how they buy senators here in the United States to send more and more money to Ukraine, and they buy them off to do that. So this is insane, to keep the war going because they profit off of the war, right? So we're going to be talking about that here coming up in just a little bit. But first, I do want to talk about the Bloomington City Council meeting. Now, we've got a few things to hit, particularly the gun safes that were given out to people. Text in, let me know if you got one of these free gun safes. They're not actually free, folks. So this was funding. It was a grant. They partnered up with an NGO. This is tale as old as time, the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. This is taxpayer money that went into this grant. It was $500,000. So people of the state of Illinois paid into this kitty, and they gave this grant to the Bloomington Police Department to give out these free guns. Now, I don't know what the portions were, how much of the NGO donations were involved. I don't know. But it all ultimately came from the Illinois Department of Commerce. That is all taxpayer money funded, right? The money that they give to people, it's all taxpayer money. So these weren't free. Okay. And these safes had a problem with the moisture control in them. And now people have rusty guns. And somebody at the council meeting said, "Are you going to be responsible for that?" Yeah, biological weapons labs in Ukraine. Yes. Why is American tax dollars continuing to fund this? Um, why were we funding Wuhan labs and developing biological weapons to be used against Americans? Yes. These are all big questions, Kevin, and I'm glad that you raised these questions. It's not even a conspiracy theory anymore, folks. We know for a fact that the U.S. State Department has investigated this. That the Wuhan lab they were developing biological weapons. They said that this was all conspiracy theory, of course, when you said that the Chinese military was working on these bioweapons. They said that was conspiracy theory. We know now that that wasn't, and that they were working on bioweapons. And we have a U.S. investigator with the State Department of the United States on record saying that China has developed a weapon that will, let me get the exact quote here, change the way that wars are fought. China, quote, might have a weapon to shift the balance of world power. Claims that China was developing a biological weapon have been made by intelligence officer and bio warfare expert. He's an Israeli. The U.S. National Intelligence Council report said, "We judge the virus um, was not developed as a biological war weapon." That's what the U.S. National, but there was a report done by the State Department, and the State Department officials said that they found that the leak happened in this Wuhan laboratory where they were developing these bioweapons. Now the question is that remains, was this done intentionally or unintentionally? If you are watching right now, go ahead, smash that like button. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about this BlackRock recruiter by senators for cheap prices, and he talks about who the real president is. All right, folks, we're going to come back. We're going to talk about this BlackRock recruiter, Serge Varley. And he was talking about how the Ukraine war is good for business. He talks about how he buys senators for cheap. If you've got 10 grand, then you can buy a senator here in the United States to sign off on things like funding for the Ukraine war because they want the war to keep going. BlackRock wants the war to keep going because it's good for business. He actually lays out a good example. So we're going to be back with that, plus things that happened at the Bloomington City Council meeting. I've been saying it from the beginning, folks. War is a racket, and I've got the proof here. 309-451-9299. This is the Morning Buzz, 8:06 a.m. here. Coming up in just a bit, we are going to be talking about the city of Bloomington. There's a cannabis dispensary that might be targeting kids with their marketing, with their name, the name of the dispensary. I know for a fact that they are targeting college students. They make that very clear in an article. That they throw out there. Plus, I want to talk about these safes. These safes that were given out to people actually weren't great because the moisture control with these gun safes were flawed. And my take on the whole thing, let's just stick to catching the bad guys, and this whole providing safes to law-abiding citizens who have firearms, probably not the best use of time or money. Money being that it came from a state grant, $500,000, the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. So this wasn't free. If you live in the state of Illinois, you paid for this grant, likely. I don't know how much of it. They partnered with this Be Smart organization, which is a Democrat non-government organization. They do this stuff all the time. They funnel these monies to these NGOs, and these NGOs say that they provide these grants, but really it comes from your taxpayer money. So we're going to be talking about that because somebody raised the question at the public comment section portion of the council meeting and said, hey, are you going to be responsible for my rusty weapon, my gun, that was in this safe, and it caused them to get rusty because the moisture control was flawed? We're going to get to that. But James O'Keefe from O'Keefe Media, shocking tape. I'm just going to play it here for you. And if you're watching on the live stream, you can see the BlackRock recruiter. His name is Serge Varley. And he talks about how the Ukraine-Russia war is good for business and how BlackRock can buy senators for cheap. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
They don't want to be in the news. They don't want people to talk about them. They don't want to be anywhere on the radar.
Why not?
I don't know, but I suspect it's probably because it's easier to do things when people aren't thinking about it. All of these financial institutions, they buy politicians. You can take this big ton of money, and then you can start to buy people. I work for a company called BlackRock.
Meet Serge Varley, a recruiter at BlackRock.
Let me tell you, it's not through who's the president. It's who's controlling the wallet. So it's
And who's that?
the hedge funds, BlackRock, the banks. These guys want campaign financing. Yep, you can buy your candidates. And obviously, we have the system in place. First, there's the senators. And these guys are rich. You got 10 grand, you can buy a senator. I can give you 500K right now. No questions asked.
Yeah.
I did it too. It's done.
Does like everybody do that? Does BlackRock do that?
It doesn't matter who wins.
You're so good.
They're my popular.
Here's Serge Varley on how good war is for BlackRock's business.
Do you have any thoughts on the Ukraine-Russia war?
Yeah, I mean, I do have thoughts.
What are they?
Ukraine is good for business. You know that, right? I'll give an example. Russia blows up Ukraine's grain silos. The price of wheat's going to go mad up. Ukrainian economy is tied very largely to the wheat market, global wheat market. Prices of bread, literally everything goes up and down. This is fantastic if you're trading. Volatility creates opportunity to make profit. War is real good for business. It's exciting.
Serge Varley, who I'm sure will not have a job with BlackRock anymore. So if you're looking to be a BlackRock employee, that job is probably going to be open, that position. So I'm sure he's a soon-to-be former recruiter. He was caught on video bragging about how much they profit off of Ukraine in this Russia war. He gave the example, if Ukraine blows up a grain silo, this is good because it creates a volatile situation where wheat prices go up, and if there's volatility, there's room to make profit. This is somebody from BlackRock admitting that they buy senators for 10 grand. You can buy a senator to vote on things that you want them to vote on. So you can buy a senator to continue to funnel money to Ukraine, where they approve money to go to Ukraine and to fuel the war because war is good for BlackRock. I've tried to explain this multiple times. It's hard to wrap your head around, but folks, this is what's going on. The president wallet is not the president wallet, right? They control the United States government, these big corporations like BlackRock. It's alarming how long BlackRock has been able to operate like this without anyone noticing. Yeah, so I great that James O'Keefe is exposing this. I don't know if there is going to be anything that comes of this because at this point they know that we know that you know that we know that you know. So they know that we know this. We know that the current president is a sock puppet, and we know that senators are bought from BlackRock. And I mean, we've known this. I don't know if this changes anything, this tape, but I sure hope it does. Shifting gears here, I want to talk about the Bloomington City Council meeting. To recap it, there was a public commenter who talked about the gun safes. Now, one thing that I want to talk about before I get into all of it, Mboka Milwambwe, and Diane Benjamin has this out there. He prepared a statement before public comment. He always reads a public statement. And the statement is actually incorrect. Public comment isn't for the council, it's for the citizens. So let's take a listen to Mboka Milwambwe and what he has to say here um, about the public comment and how it is for the city council. And we're going to correct it right here on the Morning Buzz.
Speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. And any speaker that engages in threatening and disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order.
So there you have it. In the beginning there of that statement, he talks about how common is a chance for citizens to interact with other members from the community, and to find out what's going on in their community. And these public comments are aired in a public way, so that way you can know what is going on in the city of Bloomington. And yes, I do think that the council should take time to listen and to eventually address the grievances aired during these public comments. I do have to hand it to the Bloomington City Council, unlike the town of Normal, right? They actually allow people to speak, and the town of Normal actually intimidates their citizens to not speak. And God forbid if you try to get more involved in the process or even try to get your name on the ballot for positions that are legally supposed to be there. Not anymore because Sharon Chung changed the law that they broke, right? They will sick their Chicago Madigan attorneys on you and their lawyers if you dare speak out against the town of Normal. That's just the facts. But anyway, that was Mboka Mwambwe reading his prepared statement. The public comment is for all community members, not just for the city council. Wanted to clarify that. Jackie Beyer, she was there mentioning how the failed gun safe giveaway, how she mentioned this gun safe giveaway and how they failed. These gun safes were not good. They didn't control the moisture correctly, so you wind up with rusty guns if you put this into the safe. If you put your firearms into the safe. Jackie Beyer asking the city if, hey, are you guys going to be held responsible for that? And where do we go if we have rusty guns? And are you going to pay for those?
Recipients via Facebook and a press release today that the safe is actually not for the guns. So I'm just wondering if there is any liability to the city if someone's gun is ruined by using the safe. And was just curious if the purchase of the fire safes will be will affect the reimbursement from the state for from the violence prevention grant. And then I also just want to, I know that salaries of public
she goes on
servants
into a
are
different
always
topic there.
a touchy subject.
But I
and
wanted
don't
to
know
point out what Jackie had to say there because she actually makes a great point. Is the city going to be held responsible? Like, you want to take ownership and you want to give lawful gun owners these safes, that's fine, all fine and dandy. Although this isn't really, they call it a violence prevention program. Come on now, lawful gun owners who are showing up for these safes are not the people who are causing violent crime in our city. Okay, bottom line. If you are proactively looking for a gun safe, most likely that's not going to prevent crime because guess what? They're lawful gun owners who are looking to put their gun in a safe. Plus, I think, and butt your nose out of it, really. Like, this is what it boils down to. Just butt your nose out of it. People who have firearms, gun owners, I know a lot of gun owners, right? They all have safes, especially if they have children. They all have safes. And if they don't want a safe, then who cares? Right? Then, like, hey, there's nothing you can do about it. Lawful gun owners are not the problem. Let's stick to trying to get the people who are out there shooting people with illegal firearms and who are out there skipping their bail, skipping their court dates, and cutting off their ankle bracelet or ankle monitors. Okay, let's stick to those people. To try to prevent violence, right? Getting crime off of the street. I don't think that these gun safes are really going to help prevent crime. So that's just my take on it. And look, I had somebody text in and they were like, well, these were free safes. So if she got the safe for free, then why should she expect the city to be held responsible for rusty guns? Look, folks, this wasn't for free. This is a grant given by the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. They partnered with an NGO. I don't know how much of that funding came from the NGO. It's called Be Smart Organization. They are closely affiliated with Moms Demand Action, a Democrat-run NGO. I don't know how much of that funding breakdown came from the taxpayer money, but it was a state grant. So it wasn't for free. Obviously, there were some people who paid taxes into this to make sure that this grant was a thing. So Jackie paid taxes for this sort of thing. And from the sounds of it, she didn't seem like she was against the giveaway. I'm against the giveaway. I don't think that we should have been doing it. There's so much more things that we could be doing for violent prevention than trying to get people to show up for a gun giveaway, like a gun safe giveaway. And the people who show up for it, those aren't the violent criminals. Somebody texted in, they said, and likely your name is now on a list if you got one of those gun safes. Yeah, probably. Yeah, well, I'm sure you had to, write your name down somewhere, right? I do want to shift gears, talk about Tom Kirk. The council needs to listen to him since he is a local developer and entrepreneur. This is from Diane Benjamin. She has the public comments out there. Tom makes it clear that He must decide if investing in Bloomington is worth it, since these labor unions that the city wants him to use are demanding a prevailing wage. So he mentions there's been a few council members who voted against his interests. And of course, we're talking about this housing development. He's a private developer. They're trying to develop this East Washington housing development. And he wants to use a specific group of workforce, right? But because of rebates and things like that, they're going to try to hold his arm behind his back and make him use these labor unions, these preferred labor unions. Here's Tom at the public council meeting giving comment. Here we go.
I want to present to the city at some point in time, hopefully in the next couple of months, a project that I want to build, for the city and for myself. I want to make sure that this is the right place to do it. I had a great concern over the last meeting when I think what the goal was, for developments to take place, but I think some union, issues got brought into that. And the reason it concerned me was if we're willing to pass on, or even have the conversation of passing on taxpayer dollar to make up a difference, a prevailing wage, that really scares me and really bothers me. Not only do I need the city to accept what my proposal will be, but I need to make sure that the city is responsible enough to spend the money wisely. And at the end of the day, anything that's a balance or brought out of balance by city or by government, it's going to be paid for by somebody at some point in time. And I'm kind of tired of, my taxes going up and whatnot for responsibility that way. So there's a lot of things that I need to know about to make sure that this is where I want to be, and I'm really concerned. So when union issues are brought before you, you need to remember that union is a business. It's the same as a business. If I threatened you every time you didn't use my services, how would you feel about that? I was concerned, with the comments that Tom brought forth, and I spoke with this one-on-one, so never will I bring an issue by any means of disrespect, but on Andy's job, let's say at High Side, there was 250 people that were going to be on that job. If you use union issue and union pay for the entire project, 3 of you voted no because you wanted to represent your unions over, let's say, 250 people. 5% of all the public, we have 80,000 people, 5% is 4,000 people. 6% or 8% was 6,000 people. You guys are making decisions and voting for 6% of the population, where let's say 90% of the population is.
There you have it, Tom Kirk. Okay, folks, and he brought up a great point. Like, you are voting against the interests of a vast majority of citizens because you want to protect these labor unions. And look, they are a business, and preferential treatment should not be given to any business. The city manager, Tim Gleason, he plans to survey developers, the business community, and labor to hear the thoughts on mandating a prevailing wage. You're going to hear the same exact things you just heard from Tom Kirk there, Tim Gleason. But go ahead, waste your time. It's fine. People want houses in Bloomington Normal. The supply and demand, it's very simple. You have more supply, the housing prices come down. Supply and demand. The city has a few choices, and I like how Diane Benjamin lays it out here. Number 1, quit giving rebates and incentives so that prevailing wage isn't an issue. So what they do, they try to do these incentives or rebates for these private developers to do their thing. And then in exchange, they have to use these labor unions, and they have to give them a prevailing wage. They have to give them a certain wage. Number 2, realize government can't tell private developers who to hire even with these rebates. So if you're giving rebates and incentives, you need to realize that just because you give those rebates and incentives doesn't mean that you get to tell them who to use, what kind of labor to use. Number 3, you could go full communist and demand a prevailing wage. And ultimately, what you'll wind up doing is ending all the investment opportunities in Bloomington, and Bloomington will die. All right, do want to shift gears. I actually have to take a break. I'm going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit about this cannabis dispensary popping up on the west side of Bloomington, right by the Walmart there. I have a fun story. A woman came up to me and she goes, I want to take my grandkids there. I think that it's going to be a cool cookie shop. It's not a cookie shop. It's a cannabis dispensary. That's next. Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in to the live stream. If you're watching right now, please smash that like button. Smash the like button and share this out with your friends. We don't ask much of our listeners. We definitely don't ask you to donate. We don't take your taxpayer money. We are owned and operated by local businesses here who advertise with us. And the best way to get our advertisers to advertise with us is by showing them that we have faithful listeners like you and listeners who like the programming. So go ahead, smash the like button and share this out with your friends. Okay, so we are going to be back. We're going to be talking about that cannabis industry. Plus, I do want to talk about this Midwest. It's like a group. They held a conference with these teachers in the Midwest, and they got together and they were talking about how they could subversively and quietly teach your kids about sex ed, explicit sex ed, and how they can help transition trans identifying students without your knowledge as a parent. So teachers, they have said, quote, subversively and quietly sometimes to make sure that trans kids have what they need, that they need to work on this. So that means little Timmy goes to school. He comes in, he says that he wants to be called Teresa. The teachers will continue to call him Teresa without your knowledge. And in fact, they might go as far as to give him a dress to change into while he's at school. That is what I'm talking about here, folks. And this is all paid for via your money. It's all done with your money. The federal government, they've teamed up with this organization. And I love how these organizations, they have these cute, fluffy names. Midwest Plains Equity Assistance Center. Well, who's not for equity? Who's not for assistance? Who's not for the Midwest? You know what I mean? Like, it's such a fluffy name. And their whole goal is to try to help trans identified students. You'd think that they would call themselves trans student organization or something like that, but no, they have to be shady about it and call it something completely not what it is. So trans identified students have come under attack in conservative states. This is the group, the Midwest Plains Equity Center, who hosted a 4-hour online workshop with about 30 teachers from the Midwest. And the Post Millennial reports that this group says that they have made it their life's mission to go after conservative states, legislators who have passed these new laws who take aim at that. These laws that take aim at gender identity, pronouns, access to bathrooms, and men being in women's sports. So there have been a lot of conservative states like that. There's been a lot of conservative cities that have passed things via city ordinance. So their life's mission, this group, is to try to combat that and get these teachers to adopt their own code of ethics when it comes to teaching your children. So the online workshop was funded by the Department of Education, and it included teachers in states across the Midwest like Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, and Iowa. In fact, there was a little Lake County, Illinois Education Services Director, Woodland School District, Lake County, Illinois. She took her time to slam conservative parents and say that she did not want parental rights policies adopted in the state of Illinois. So, yeah, that's concerning. You've got teachers out there actively saying they don't want the parents involved in their kids' education because, of course, they believe that it's their child, not your child. So yeah, there's a lot of far left progressive teachers out there, but this is scary because they are actually paying for these discussions and workshops to take place via your money. So there were, what was it, $8.5 million in funding from the Department of Education. This is a report done by the Daily Mail. I don't know how they got all of these quotes. I'm assuming that they had somebody infiltrate from within who attended the discussion, the online workshop. So we'll have to see if this story develops at all and if we find out what the Daily Mail did to get all of this info. I love this text. They go, but Kat, they want the higher housing costs because that means more money. It's all about the money. Taxes. Yes, yes, yes. We're going to be back here in just about 30 seconds. Oh, hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Y'all can text in, be a part of the show. I've got a few texts here. Kat, they want the housing prices to go up because guess what? That means more taxes for them, more tax money for them. Yeah, I'm so proud of you. Thanks for texting in 309-451-9299. I love it when you guys text in. I've also got Kevin here. He's texting in, Kevin Lauer. He says, why is American taxpayer dollars continuing to fund biological weapons in Ukraine? You bring up a great point. He also says we were talking about the biological weapons in the Wuhan lab. The U.S. State Department was investigating it. They did a report, that essentially said, yeah, they were conducting bioweapons experiments in the Wuhan lab. It leaked. And I like Kevin's comment here. He says, why were we funding the Wuhan labs to develop biological weapons to be used against Americans? Now the question becomes, and throw it in the comments or text it in, the question becomes, did Wuhan and did the Chinese military leak this on purpose? That's the question. That's the conspiracy theory out there that has yet to be proven true. Okay, so there have been a lot of conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theory. No, these aren't conspiracy theories anymore. We have the State Department. They've done a comprehensive report now that suggests that there were bioweapons programs being conducted in this Wuhan lab, and then the leak caused millions of people to die. Millions of people to die. And I don't know, I have a very personal story. My dad, very close to me, um, he went through this and can no longer work because COVID permanently damaged and disabled him. Right? This is just facts. This is what happened in my life personally. I know many of you who went through this. Maybe you got COVID-19. Maybe you had to go to the hospital. I've shared my personal story. I went through hell with a lot of these hospitals and these people who were trying to profit off of my dad being sick. And I saw it happen. This is what was going on. So I do want to shift gears and talk a little bit about the city of Bloomington. Before we took the break, we were talking about that housing development. You guys texted in, you said, well, Kat, they want the housing prices to go up because that means more taxpayer money. Yes, it sure does. I alluded to the cannabis dispensary. This was a tease I did in the break. I have a personal story to share. I was out at Tailgate and Tall Boys talking with this woman. She said that she parked by this place that hasn't been open yet, and it was called Cookies. She said, I'm not a big fan of crumble. I like crumble cookies. I think that the price is worth it, to be honest with you. I like crumble cookies. I'm a big sugar person. I love sugar. I love caffeine. It keeps me going. I'm one of those people, and I just run 7 miles a day in order to eat my cookies. So that's how I do it. But she says that she's excited to take her grandkids there, and I go, I haven't really heard of this, and I looked into it a little bit, and I found out that it was a dispensary, and then I also found out that they put this in a Yahoo Finance article talking about the dispensary. Here we go. It says Illinoisans can expect even more cookies flour. I'm assuming that means marijuana. I don't know. I can't keep up with the terminology when it comes to marijuana. There's always like so many different kinds of terms they use to refer to it, but I'm assuming flour means marijuana. So Illinoisans can expect even more cookies flour in July. So, as the company opens its Illinois flagship store in a vibrant college town of Bloomington, just as Revolution cultivated the flour for enlightened dispensary shops, it will also nurture and harvest flour for Cookies' flagship location and all cookie shops and other dispensaries that carry cookie products in Illinois. So here we have they aren't even being quiet about this, right? They are targeting college students. In fact, you can ride the bus there for free if you're a college kid and get your dope, get your fix. Okay, so I have a big issue with the marketing in this with this dispensary. Why are you calling it cookies? Come on now, like, are you targeting kids? And I don't get how nicotine cartridges, right? You've got these nicotine cartridges that are banned, and you can't have flavored nicotine cartridges. Why are you allowed to call marijuana like blueberry dream or purple fantasy or whatever, right? These names of this different type of marijuana sold at these dispensaries. Why are you allowed to do that when you can't even sell nicotine that are in these like flavored cartridges? I don't know. I don't know. So the article doesn't explain why the name Cookies was chosen for this dispensary. Revolution, as I referred to in that Yahoo Finance article, it's a different dispensary. They are the third approved dispensary on Rab Road on Normal's dispensary. There's a dispensary everywhere. I don't know. Maybe they're calling it cookies because it makes you want to eat cookies when you go to cookies. I don't know. I have no idea, but I don't like it. 309-451-9299. We are going to come back and I want to talk about these Midwest teachers, about 30 of them. They went to this conference held by what's called Midwest Plains Equity Center. Oh, well, that sounds nice. No, it's not nice because this conference, they were all talking about how they were going to quietly transition your kids behind your back. Teachers, well, you send them to school, they're going to transition your kids behind your back, and they're going to quietly teach them explicit sex ed. And it's all funded by the Department of Education. Federal money is going towards this conference to be held. So I'm going to be back. We're going to talk about an Illinois teacher specifically who was in attendance of Lake County, Illinois. She was in attendance at this conference. So catch me on the Facebook Live. We're on Facebook Live. We're on YouTube Live. We're on Twitter. We're also on Rumble. Check us out. I'll be back. I'll be back. Yes, we are going to be talking about those Midwest teachers. A couple of other things. I'm going to get to your comments here. That doesn't fit with the narrative of the communist gun grabbers, right? So I was talking about how, hey, maybe we shouldn't be giving gun safes out to people, and we could avoid situations like the one we had with the Bloomington Police Department, where they gave out a bunch of these gun safes. And I said that, hey, let's just let law-abiding citizens get their own gun safes. And because a gun safe, like a gun, is very specific to that individual. Okay, so I don't know what these gun safes look like. It sounds like they were all of the same manufacturer, right? So I don't think that you got much of an option when it came to a free gun safe given to you by the Bloomington Police Department. And what if it wasn't a moisture like a moisture problem? What if it was a locking mechanism problem where you go to grab your gun because there's a home invader in your home, right, in Bloomington, and the gun safe that the government gave you malfunctioned and you weren't able to get your gun out of the safe? What if the locking mechanism malfunctioned? Right. So there's all kinds of problems that come with trying to give people free things. Okay. Because if you want to take responsibility and ownership of giving out these free gun safes and this violence prevention program bullcrap, if you want to take ownership of that, then you need to take ownership of all of it. And if these gun safes were to malfunction, And look, folks, I just don't trust the state. Maybe the state wanted these to malfunction, right? Did they want these to malfunction? Are they doing this at a statewide level? Are they giving these grants out to multiple um, cities? And are they using faulty gun safes to where you might not be able to use your weapon anymore? I mean, even the moisture thing, right? A rusty gun, that's not going to work. You got to oil your gun. It's got to be lubed up pretty well. You got to clean your gun after. It's supposed to be after every use. I'm not sure about that. Gun owners, please let me know. But after every other use, right, you have to clean your gun. You keep it lubed up. So if it's rusty, if there's a moisture problem with it, then you are running into a gun malfunction. And this is not anything that you can bat an eye at. The fact that the state gave them money to purchase firearms, right? Firearm safes, and these firearm safes were malfunctioning. Sounds to me like they might not want you to use your gun. This is the same state of Illinois who is actively trying to ban uh, assault weapons, right? Whatever the hell that means. You can't trust the state of Illinois. Somebody brought up a great point here through the break. This is the Morning Buzz. I'm Kat Peterson. Somebody brought up a great point. Look, folks, if the state is giving money to people, grants, right, and it's your taxpayer money, this grant, they partnered with an NGO to give out safes. I'm not sure if the Bloomington Police Department had any kind of say in what manufacturer they used, but they used the same manufacturer for all of these gun safes. And they said it was a manufacturing problem, or the manufacturer was not exactly truthful in their statement that they posted on Facebook about these gun safes not holding moisture correctly and ultimately making weapons rusty. If you are a firearm owner, you know that you clean your gun after use. After use, like every other use, right? They say to clean your gun, you have to keep it oiled, well lubed up, right? You have to keep it clean. Um, my problem is here, okay, so these safes were paid for using a state grant. The same state, the state of Illinois, who is actively trying to take away your Second Amendment rights. They're going after with this gun ban, the assault weapons ban, right? So-called assault weapons ban, and they're banning guns that have over 15 round magazines in them. But it doesn't apply to police officers. It only applies to you, the law-abiding citizen. This is the same state who is going after your Second Amendment rights. So is it too far-fetched to suggest that perhaps the state uh, is, you know, encouraging manufacturers to purchase these gun safes that don't work? So imagine this. Imagine it wasn't a temperature control issue or a moisture issue, which could ultimately render your gun useless. Imagine if it was a locking mechanism. So all the safes, they have a locking mechanism on it. Imagine if it was a locking mechanism issue and you have an intruder come into your home and you go to access this almost state issued gun safe, right? Because it's paid for by the state. And the state was working with a non government organization to get this initiative out there, this violence prevention initiative out there. And you go, a robber comes in, armed robber. You go to grab your gun out of the safe, and the locking mechanism doesn't work. You're dead. I don't know. This is the issue with giving away free stuff. Okay, I'm not about the government being involved in giving me free stuff, because ultimately, you are responsible for when it fails. If you are willing to take ownership of the initiative of the violence prevention program and give away these free safes, then ultimately you have to be responsible for what happens if these gun safes were to fail. Bottom line, I do want to shift gears, talk about this Midwest group of teachers. They held a conference on how to, quote, subversively and quietly teach explicit sex ed and gender transitioning to students without parental knowledge. We're going to talk about that. And hopefully we get to the secret audio captured by a teacher going absolutely insane on this 13-year-old girl for dare saying that there's two genders. So teachers across the Midwest, they were at this online workshop, and this online workshop was hosted by Midwest and Plains Equity Center. And they're funded by, drumroll please, the federal government, the Department of Education. So they're funded by you. And what happened was these teachers all got together and schemed and plotted to adopt their own personal code of ethics. So here's a scenario for you. You have a son, his name's Timmy. Timmy goes to school, says that he wants to be called Teresa. These teachers will call him Teresa and not inform you that they're doing this. Timmy wants to wear a dress. So Miss Smith, the teacher, brings the dress to school for him to change in the bathroom. And they don't have any obligation to tell you because they've adopted their own code of ethics and they think that it's ethical to hide a trans identified student's new gender and name change from their parents. So this is what's going on. There was an Illinois teacher that was in attendance. She is the director of education services at Woodland School District in Lake County, Illinois, and she slammed parents and teachers who wanted to see parental rights policies adopted by the state because obviously the kids that go to school are her kids, not your kids. This is sad. The federal government, under Title IV, secured $8.5 million in funding from the Department of Education to go about hosting this conference and giving money to this Midwest Plains Equity Assistance Center that holds these conferences. And they have operations with teachers across the Midwest, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, Iowa, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. Come on, guys. This is scary stuff. This is scary stuff. This is the federal government being weaponized against you, the parent, and they are trying to indoctrinate your child and get your child to hate you. Yes. Well, that's one way to ensure that if you are given anything from the government for free, and like I said, I've debunked this several times, it wasn't for free. You paid for it via your taxpayer money. Um, you should always do your own research. Anything that the government says, do your own research. Anything that the government wants to give you, do your own research. You wouldn't take a government vaccine without doing your own research, right? We've seen the problems with that. Um, there's a lot of things that we got to today. We are going to be back here at it. I have a quick audio piece from a teacher in England, right? So I think a lot of times we get isolated in the United States and we think that we're the only ones who do the LGBTQ stuff. That's not true. There's a audio clip here of a teacher who said it's despicable for the girl, the 13-year-old girl, to say, and I quote, if you have a vagina, you're a girl, and if you have a penis, you're a boy. So she thought that was absolutely despicable. She even went as far as to say that she shouldn't go to school anymore and that she needs to be re-educated. And she was reporting her to a principal. And she needs to have proper educational conversation about equality, diversity, and inclusion because she wasn't going to allow her to express factual evidence in her classroom. Um, yeah, it's wild. Good morning. This is the morning buzz, and tomorrow's Thursday. Today is Wednesday, 8:55. Now, one thing I wanted to hit on before we go was the teacher in England. So a lot of times here in the United States, I think that we think that the LGBTQ nonsense is exclusive to this country, especially in the month of June, but it's not. This was in England. There is some secret audio that was obtained where it was in the Church of England school. So I know what you're thinking. You're like, Kat, you said Church of England, Christian church? Yes. So what happened was this 13-year-old girl, she committed the crime of saying that there were two genders, and the teacher went completely woke, mental, and started yelling at her, saying that she shouldn't go to school there anymore. She needs to go to a different school, and that she was reporting her to the principal. And she said that, quote, you need to have a proper education conversation about equality, diversity, and inclusion. So this is customary, right? If you disagree with your teacher and you say, hey, I believe that there's two genders, or not even I believe, I know that there's two genders. How do I know that? Because of 2,000 plus years of science that have indicated that there is only two sexes. Gender isn't a real word. So the truth, right? It's customary for teachers to throw you out of the class and re-educate you on gender identity, right? And naturally, the 13-year-old girl who was screamed at for suggesting that there's two genders, the parents were understandably angry, and the parents said that she was baffled that there was no opposing viewpoints that were allowed, and that the school would shut down opposing viewpoints in such a threatening and aggressive manner. Yeah. Uh, this is the Church of England. I know, the same Church of England, you should know. Um, this is the established Christian Church of England, and they refer to God using they them pronouns. So there's that. That's what's going on. And the parent of the little girl who was yelled at about saying that there's two genders, she said, quote, regardless of the subject, education should build awareness of differing viewpoints to widen the understanding of the subject. It shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be a case of indoctrination. It shouldn't be, but it is. And it wasn't always like this. I wish we could go back to a time where girls could be tomboys, like to fish, like to uh, drive big trucks, right? Where we could have tomboys, and where we could have boys who like to sing, like to dance, and like to go to musicals or participate in theater, right? And realize that that's not them wanting to be a different gender. That's them just being them. All right, I have to take I gotta go. 8:58 a.m. here on the Morning Buzz. Catch you again tomorrow morning. I so do appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to visit our social medias, like, subscribe, share, and you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. I love you.